All right, so today I have Margaret Sikora. I hope I pronounced that correctly. With me on the podcast. She is the CEO of Woodpecker, which is a code outreach tool system. She has worked in cold outreach for more than 9 years, so she has quite a lot of experience, and I am quite excited to actually dig into all of that experience, especially in, I think, the unique perspective of having watched, the process that like it's went through over the last almost decade. Um, so yeah, I'm super excited to have you on.
Absolutely. Thanks for this invitation. And some of you, if you watched other like podcasts with me or follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I'm probably a bit unhealthy enthusiastic about cold outreach. So anything around that, I'm happy to talk and share all what I know.
Nice. Well, it sounds like we're somewhat similar in that aspect. Um, nice. I think what I found super interesting and quite unique, to be honest, was the fact that you started like as a customer success manager or representative initially. I think 7 years ago. Is that correct?
A bit over, yeah.
Yeah. Damn. And then you actually grew like within the company and ended up as the CEO. Like over that time span, what do you feel like has changed in the space?
I think like everything. Looking from very outside perspective, when we started, so I was junior supporter, and objectively then like having a sequencer, so just something that just orders your email sending. That was the value itself. And right now, almost 10 years after, we have like the possibility to build something with the AI tools like vibe coding, and then you can build your own sequencer in like 2 days with like all technology that is out there. It does not mean that it will be necessarily a good sequencer because it relies very heavy on infrastructure. But like the change on the market is crazy. And in the meantime, all upside and downside of Google changes warm up. Then like, from scaling vertically to scaling horizontally, so from multiple domains and mailboxes. Like, I mean, if you did cold outreach like 5 to 8 years ago and you took a break and right now you're coming back to absolutely different game with like absolutely different assets, and it's just something different. So yeah, there was a lot of change.
Have you approached that? Have you like managed that? Because I feel the same. I've only been in the space for like 4 years now, and like just within those 4 years, how much it's actually changed. And I don't have a tool set up that has to actually follow and like be at the forefront. I run an agency, but that's a service base. That's easier to be nimble and switch tools and things like that. Have you managed that? How have you approached that?
I mean, it's challenging. That's first of all. But I think, there is a good and bad side of that. So the good side of that is usually in outreach, especially like when you do cold emailing or actually any other channel that I'm aware of, a lot depends on having very healthy basis. So it's very easy to fall for like super shiny new things that seems to be, this like silver bullet that will solve all your problems. Usually this type of mechanism, they sustain for a very short period of time. So, on the good side, if you have a lot of experience with cold outreach and you understand the basis, it's kind of easier to catch up. But right now with AI, there is way much more noise than it used to be in the past. So if you're cold emailing, you are like objectively competing in the inbox not only against like other people, other competitors, but also against like pure trash that is just taking out your space. So yeah, you need to adjust your perspective a lot to understand also how you can help your customers. And one thing that remains there is that the only thing I don't think you can trick is having healthy infrastructure. Because like you can build everything, but if your infrastructure, and I mean up to deep core of tech, so up to like, physical machines with IPs that are healthy, then over that virtual machines that are also maintained properly, up to any proxy that goes out to the world, this is something that you need to maintain. And this is something that is not cheap and not easy to have in a good, in a good state, because otherwise, like we've all in industry heard about like warm-up networks that did not do warm-up but actually decreased your scoring and so on and so forth. So this is the whole story about like why to have healthy infra, you need to actually plan it ahead and, manage it on scale, which is not so easy. So, there are some good sides stemming from having more years of experience, but also, of course, you need to catch up with everything that is changing.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that's also where like most, we speak to quite a few businesses where they do some sort of outreach themselves. Oftentimes, they had like a good amount of success with it like a year or 2 years back, and then now it's just fallen off a cliff. And almost all of them, it feels like it's the technical aspect of deliverability, actually like knowing that obviously there's new platforms coming out that's also making it easier. But like, I feel like that's probably the most common denominator of like founders or companies that don't get results. They don't really have that foundation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've heard of any channel, like not only cold outreach, but overall any acquisition channel, when someone said like, yeah, it gets easier on this channel to convert, like objectively, paid ads, social media. I haven't heard someone saying like, go to this channel. It's so super easy. It's easier than it was 2 years ago. Like, it's not the case. The market becomes more crowded, organic traffic is dying, and we all see it, right? Like the acquisition, we used to have blogs and stuff like this. That was the main engine. It's not there anymore and it will decline. So objectively, we are working, like all of us, trying to get customers in the market that is more difficult. So, the part of that is actually the landscape itself, not only the question of, sequencers, cold outreach, overall acquisition is tough. But this is reality, and I think this is the natural progression like that we are at, because right now the growth is faster than it used to be because of technology and AI, and we need to adjust to it.
I think that's also a situation that if you're a founder or like a GTM leader or marketing leader or whatever the title might be, like the other situation, if you're not already doing outreach, might be like, which channel should you actually choose? Like, what's actually the best channel to go for? If you go on LinkedIn or you go on YouTube or wherever you go on, there's going to be, everyone is saying, this is that is that, and my thing is the best. Actually knowing what works for your business is not that easy. Like, how do you look at it in terms of what channels actually make sense in which cases?
Sure, that's a good question. And especially in B2B sales, usually the person who is like your targeted person supposed to get in touch with a brand a bunch of times before making buying decision. It's very unlikely that someone will purchase just based on this one point of contact. With cold outreach, like if you're just outreaching but you don't have properly done web page, you don't have this digital footprint of LinkedIn, social media, YouTube, whatever else is there, you're basically decreasing your chances to convert. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions I see towards cold outreach is that we treat it as something separate from your acquisition strategy. And it's not the case. I mean, it's a part of feeding your funnel. So you need to understand where and why you're feeding. And just to give you an example, if you're doing marketing, for example, focused on brand or thought leadership, anything around that, that's one layer. And then, for example, if you go deeper with that, you can plug in your outreach for particular verticals to try to convert further in your funnel. So for example, you get in touch with people, you see who is watching your posts, interacting, then you try to loop back to some newsletter or community, then you can try to convert with cold outreach, or you can start the funnel with cold outreach and try to feed your social media channels. But the worst thing you can do is just do it randomly, because then you have no control over the funnel. So basically you do random stuff and you see if they work in isolation, but this is not how it works. It's also not how we make decisions. People, like for example, I'm very driven in terms of emotions and just, watching competitors and stuff like this. So usually I'm reacting to this type of messaging. But for example, I don't know, my CTO, he's very ROI focused and tech focused, and like he's not reacting to the same type of things that I am. So even having this shows that you need different types of messaging and even different channels. Like he's usually not reading emails and I am reading emails, but he's, for example, checking forums and checking groups that can help him to progress in whatever he's doing at the point. So, it's like it should be all as a strategy, not as one point of contact. And yeah, I think also usually people are a bit afraid to test new channels, or at least I feel that there's a bit of reluctancy to try something out. And I see it a lot with, for example, trying to switch between different outreach channels. So, for example, I know hardcore cold emailers who are dedicated to saying, I'll never go on LinkedIn with outbound because it's not my thing. But if, for example, you see people are not opening your emails or are not responsive, why not to try another outbound channel? I mean, the cost is usually pretty low. So it's just like the matter of seeing what works.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that's probably something that's evolved quite a bit as well. I feel like back when I started, you could like get around just sending an email and actually converting people without like even having a website sometimes. But like I actually looked at it, I think last weekend, from the cold outreach that we do for ourselves, how much web traffic that drives to our website is like pretty massive, to be honest, compared to like everything else. So it just shows people actually do like due diligence, especially if you're reaching out to people that are relatively sophisticated, which I think a lot of B2B buyers are. Like they're not just gonna buy a thing or hop on a meeting without having looked up at least your company. So actually having that presence is, yeah, I think makes a massive difference. And it also gives you, like you mentioned, like it gives you so many different options of connecting the different channels together of, hey, then when they've actually, replied via email, then I connect with them on LinkedIn as well. And then, I send them a message there as well. And when they, are on my website and come from an email and they don't convert, then you can use like RB2B or tools like that to actually convert them or reach out to them specifically there. So there's so many different approaches that you can use when you use more channels. But of course, it does also get more, like you have to be in control of more things as well. How do you think about actually putting together that strategy? Like, how do you choose which channels should you actually use? Like, what's actually best for your buyer type or your business?
So I think the one of the parts of the discussion is to ask yourself a question: are you looking for like short-term return from the investment or long-term? Because that's very important. Because things like thought leadership or brand, they're usually like medium to long perspective because you need to build the audience and do stuff around that. And for example, cold outreach or ads are on the shorter end because you are in direct contact somehow with the audience. So that's like one question. What you're looking for? Do you need leads like now, or you want to build a pipeline because you have a runway, so you still have time? That's one thing. The other thing is like what you're trying to do. Are you trying to multiply customers that you have? So you have your ICP and I want more of these, not the other ones that were coming in. Or you want to test, because with outreach, you can also easily test. Is it a good market? Is it good messaging? Does it stick? Is it this value proposition something I should focus on the side of marketing? So, first of all, you should set up a goals, because of course, ultimately what we all want, we want to have more money and we want to earn better and we want to just, get more conversion. But unfortunately, to get there, you need to structure it a bit. So, setting up goals and understanding why you're going particular way, and also looking like, is it something that you have enabled in your company already or not? So for example, if you're like solopreneur and you don't have any copywriting skills and this is not something very natural for you, maybe going for thought leadership and writing on LinkedIn will be more overwhelming than trying to find some form that is more natural for you, your attitude, the way you behave. So there is no good or bad way. There is just unstructured and structured way, and usually unstructured leads you to burn out quicker than the other one because you're trying to push yourself in the places where you will just simply not perform as good as you could. And I would say trying with outbound is actually the safest you could get at the beginning, especially because if you have any customers, you can try to do like lookalike searches or anything that will help you to move around this ICP. And if you have current customers, you can try to upsell them with outbound. So like do cold outreach, but just to your customers. And you can do reactivation of your churned customers. So you have at least 3 jobs that you can do from day one if you already exist on the market. And if you are just starting, you can try to validate in a quick way if there is like, product market fit or offer market fit. Call it whatever you want. So yeah, it's just a matter of starting. Outbound is usually very easy at the beginning with other mechanisms, for example, LinkedIn presence or Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. This is something you need to invest a bit more time to build it organically.
Do you think there's like a difference between like the sales cycles between those different channels as well? Like how qualified or educated the meetings or the conversations are?
For sure. I mean, it depends also heavily on your service or product, because if you're selling to enterprise, probably your conversion time will be long just because of technical aspects like legal, compliance, whatever else is there. So to some extent, yes, but like in terms of cold outreach, the comfort you get is that you have selection of your prospects on personal level. You don't get it with ads, you don't get it with social media because you cannot control who is watching your content or clicking your. Of course, you can to some extent, but it's not like one-to-one level. So answering your question, conversion on the level where you can select like purely, I want to reach out to this person, even if on scale it's like the average for global is between 1 to 3%, right? If you look at like the global standard for cold emailing, but still you have more control over to whom you're reaching out to. So if you're like looking for more control and like very precise outreach, that's the way to go. For the others, you need to rely on volume and you need to rely on scale because otherwise that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. What we've actually noticed as well, I guess, and that's also like in relation to the, people look you up and like do more research from an email before they even respond. Is also like, if you don't have that like foundation on other channels, the meetings that you do get are very uneducated because they've literally just seen an email and they've like responded back and said, yeah, sure, let's have a meeting or let's have a chat. Where, you can have a similar thing if you run Facebook ads where they just see one ad and then they think, sure, let me, sign me up as a lead. Something that we've like thought about quite a bit as well is like, I feel like there's a lot of people both actually when they test Facebook ads or like cold outreach, where they start or like they have their sales process set up around a warm lead, like not even warm, like half sold lead, because they're used to getting referrals or from networking events or maybe even from Google ads where they have like pain right now. They're searching literally for your solution. Whereas like those types of sales conversations, I feel like it's almost not sales. It's like, this is what I do. This probably solves your problem. Let's move forward. And then most of them will end up moving forward. But when you start actually doing like a marketing channel, so if it's, Facebook or if it's like whatever it might be, direct outreach, I feel like a lot of people test it, then they get leads and then they conclude, no, these leads or these conversations are not qualified, because in their mind, like qualified is people that like are ready to buy essentially. And I think that's just such a shame at the end of the day, because you just need like more, like you need an actual sales process, especially in B2B as well, where like those businesses that we work with as well, where they really get the ROI from it, is those that, they already have a sales process set up. Do you see that as well? Is that something that you experience?
Sure, I know what you mean. So yeah, I think there are a bunch of components to that. So, well, first of all, in terms of qualification, and I think this is like a very constant thing. So, marketing feeding leads and then salespeople not being able to close them. And then where is the fault? So is it the fault of a sales team not closing or marketing bringing wrong leads? And I mean, that's a mixture. So generating traffic or generating leads is not the problem for like, I think any business or majority of that I know. The problem is to get those leads that you will be able to close, because otherwise there is like no reason to have them. And the thing is, it really depends on your market awareness. So I mean, how much you understand to whom you're reaching out to. And I'll give you a very simple example. If your market or your prospects are very sophisticated, so they are aware of your niche, they will need a lot of proof. So they will need mechanisms that you use. They will need social proof. They will need reviews. They will need all those stuffs that prove that what you're selling is anyhow better from what they use. The benefit of that is that usually they understand the concept. But there are other niches, like for example, right now, the whole niche around AI that is growing, and we have a lot of question marks, that people are not so sophisticated. Their understanding of the subject matter is pretty low. Therefore, they need just like the general idea and education. And the thing is that each of those type of personas, you need to try to approach and close in a different way. They will need different things to buy from you. And if you treat them all like in the same way, so, you know, the popular division, outbound, inbound, and we closed inbound deals in that way and outbound in the other one. That's not exactly how it works. You know, different people with different awareness of the problem will need absolutely different things to buy from you. And going even one step further, if you're selling to small companies, usually you just reach out to decision makers. If you're reaching out to bigger organizations, you need usually something that I call buying committee. So you need like decision maker on financial side, decision maker on operational side, the person that will be your champion, so will promote that you're a good solution, that we should use you because that's a good idea, and will push the others to actually convert. So I think micro-segmentation is a real thing that changes the conversion right now, but not only because of intent signals and stuff that are very popular and widely discussed, but also because of understanding of your persona. And this is something very old school. Like ICP is not a new thing. It exists like, I think, forever. And we tend to simplify it to like, okay, so ICP, let's just get signals, or let's just get something, you know, that will tell us that's the good moment. But that's not exactly the only thing you need. You need to understand like how you fit into the landscape. And it's unfortunately a bit of homework to do. And usually that's a boring one, but that gives you a little bit more like standing in front of the prospect. If you do marketing and if you do sales, that's kind of the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true actually. Like so true. Both in the outreach that you do or the like messaging there, you have to think about, you know, like in the eyes of your prospect, in the eyes of your ideal customer that is supposed to actually see this message. And it's the same on the sales call and the rest of the process. If you're treating them all like the same and as if they had all the same information and all the same level of education, then you know you're going to lose quite a lot of them. I think quite naturally. Like you mentioned intent signals. How much is like how do you think about that? How much is that something that you use and you see you know people in the cold outreach space use?
I think like there is a lot of signals that are overused, and some of them make sense. I mean, like, so for example, founding, like when you get like some investment from venture, or, you know, you're recruiting someone, sure, if that fits your offer, that makes sense. But, you know, the fact that someone posted on LinkedIn, or the fact that you appreciate someone's job position, like in IT, we get banner blindness for that a month after the template is released, so there is no sense to use it anymore. So overall, I think intent signals can be used, but you need to somehow tie it to your offer and your strategy. Because when you say like, hey, you got financing from this and this venture capital, congratulations, and then you talk about other random stuff, like what's the connection between that you get? I mean, the connection is that you get some money so you can spend it on me, but this is not exactly what, you know, usually the prospect is looking for. So I think what is more important than intent itself is actually the construction of your email and angles. So for example, if I want to reach out to, I don't know, CEOs that are right now in the process of getting funding, and those are like, let's say, small to medium companies. If I look up on forums or LinkedIn, whatever, I'll probably find that, founder is usually the person who is struggling with both sales process and product process, especially for SaaS, right? So for example, if I'm on sales calls, my roadmap is kind of like dying because I don't have time to take care of it, and the other way around. If I'm focusing on the roadmap, my pipeline is drying because I'm not there. So, then you have the angle, you have the idea, like what's the pain of that person, and you can present from that perspective through the eyes of ROI. So what kind of time optimization, more revenue you'll get if you have optimized this and that. Or on the other angle, like what a relief that would be for you if you have this taken care of. Like trying to find the angle, and if you understand the problem or the pain of the person, it becomes more important than the trigger itself, because you feel the sympathy or you feel the driver that usually triggers you to take decisions. So I would say intent signals are good if you know how to use them. It's like with every tool, right? It's the same like with AI. With AI and personalization and scaling, whatever, if you try to sell meat to vegan restaurants, you'll convert zero regardless of how much of AI you will put on it, because It doesn't make sense. They will not buy. They don't need meat because they are vegan. So, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it's not everything.
For me, like I feel like every time I think about these things, it always comes down to like relevance. It's what you're reaching out with, is it actually relevant to the person you're reaching out to? Because if it is, and it's something that, and that is sort of in the word relevant, if it's something that would genuinely help them and genuinely solve a problem, that's like 95% of marketing. It's like, if it's actually relevant, they'll probably like respond or sign up as a lead or whatever it might be. And it's also where like the competition, and what you mentioned earlier as well, like where you're competing with it, both on like literally on all channels now as well. Like on Facebook, it's just like content that was created by AI without a human looking at it. And it's the same on email. It's emails that were fully written by AI and all look the same and all have the EM dashes and are formatted in a weird way and mention whether you went to university and like has no relevance. So you're competing against those. So if you actually write like a message where it's actually relevant to the person that you're reaching out to, you have somewhat like product market fit, it's actually something that they'll want. You're pretty like far along the way, from my experience. What do you think about like in terms of signals as well? Like what we oftentimes I feel like run into with signals is most of them you can run like smaller campaigns, and they tend to work quite well if it's again relevant. The issue oftentimes becomes the scalability. Is that something you run into?
Yeah, it's actually very similar. Overall, smaller campaigns, so like segmented to smaller batches, do perform better on scale. At the end of Q4, we ran this assessment. There were like 27 million of sent emails from the last quarter that we took into analysis. And smaller campaigns overall, they have better performance from both technical and like personalization / segmentation perspective. But again, it also depends like what type of problem you solve and what type of pain you address. Because if you address something that is super severe for your targeted group, so like, the problem severity, people are dying here problem for the business, usually you don't need that much of like super segmented focus, because this will resonate. Of course, I'm not talking about like 100K people in one campaign, because that's not gonna work. But you not always need it. It's just a matter of what you're basically selling and what is your targeted group. But yeah, with signals, it will be always the case, because signal is limited in time and is limited to narrow group of people that you define. So it will always make your campaign smaller. But that's a simple test that you can run. So if you're running into issue of like small campaigns, you can retarget the same people after 3 months with different angle and the same value proposition, or with different language snippet, the same value proposition, or just rotate value propositions. So for example, what we do, we create smaller batches on each step of the sequence. So like opening email, first follow-up, second follow-up, we test the same value proposition but different angles. Or if we have multiple value propositions, we test different value proposition, the same angle, not to A/B test too many stuff because then you don't have data
Yeah.
that you can rely on. And objectively with that, if you take one niche at 1 month and two niches at month two, if you multiply it and come back to each niche after 3 months, in the 6 months, you'll have a system that basically allows you to send 10K a month for just this one use case. So you can scale this up, but I would say it's not through the volume. So you just search for more unique signals because it will just make it more general, so less targeted. But you try to scale it through different angles and repurposing the same group.
Yeah. It's interesting you mention it as well. It's something that we've tested more recently, actually reaching out to the same lists twice. Most people run like a 3-step sequence, like one email and then 2 follow-ups, and that works. And like when I ran the similar thing like quite a while back, where we then reran the same list a month or 2 months later, it typically didn't work as well as the first run. That's actually something we've seen change now. We're also more sophisticated in it in terms of actually doing exactly what you also mentioned, of actually testing different angles. So we make sure you're not just sending the same email to the same person that you did a month ago or 2 months ago. Both for the technical aspect of like if their inbox has already received the exact same email, it's probably less likely to actually land in their inbox. But of course also like if it like already spikes the same, I already like received this message, it obviously doesn't really work that well.
Yeah, sure. You need to change something because, of course, people don't remember your cold email. But if it didn't stick at the first place, it's better to adjust something more substantial. So do like a real change out there. On the other hand, that's interesting also to see what converted in the second round, not in the first, because that gives you the perspective. Okay, so maybe actually in this batch, I've mixed up 2 ICPs instead of 1 because, the other group reacted to something different. So that's interesting test. The only thing I do highly recommend is to always validate the list again between like the first sending and the second.
Yeah,
Because
a lot of
like,
people move jobs. Yeah, 100%. That's a mistake you only make once. Yeah. Like if we move like back up into like bigger picture, something I wanted to ask you as well is like, you've been in cold outbound and cold outreach for a while. Like what makes you continue to have like belief in the channel and continuously want to put I imagine most of your energy and waking hours into the channel?
I think, like on the objective side, I cannot imagine running B2B business without having email. I can imagine having business without LinkedIn, not in IT probably, but overall, yes. Without email, no. And right now, when it becomes even used in some formal aspects, like communication with, formal stuff that you manage, I don't think it will expire. So the channel will be used and people will go there to check stuff. Therefore, it's there and it can be used for marketing and sales purposes. And the other one is that I don't think, in terms of business, that the channel matters. Like, this is not the first thing that you focus on. The first thing is actually understanding your offer and how it fits to the market. And outreach, so cold outbound, is one of the easiest way to validate it. So you cannot do it in a faster way. Like to test your value proposition on ads, you need to spend thousands on your ad budget. Otherwise, it will just not give you the sample that is big enough to do the comparison. And with cold outreach, like both LinkedIn and email, you can test it pretty fast. So it gives you the feedback. And I think with that speed of changing environment right now in the world, fast feedback on what we are doing right and wrong is extremely important. So yeah, I feel like this is the reason why I believe it makes sense to invest in cold outreach and to still keep it. Plus it's getting cheaper and cheaper. So overall, like the data are getting cheaper and also like tech stack behind it is usually getting cheaper. So yeah, I think it just makes sense. And now when I think about it, I spend like 1/3 of my life with cold outreach.
That's what I mean. That's crazy.
So I mean, I like it. It's cool. It's very technical as well. So I like the fact that it's not like just you can just come here and start doing it and it will work. It'll work for a week and then it will just die. So it's appealing that it's not so straightforward, but you can actually build it as a system. Like, I've seen customers sending with Woodpecker for like last 7 years, and I've seen them like, being super stressed about the changes and then facing them, fixing it, moving forward. So I see how people can adjust and understand the new context, which is very inspiring. And also, like, when you look at the spread of the volume, we have people or companies sending 30 million emails a month, which I consider a lot.
Yeah, I would as
But we
well.
have the ones that send like 1,000, but that their ROI from one closed deal is so high that they treat it like, the best acquisition channel they could have. So it's also interesting to see how it fits into different business models.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. We used to work with a lot of solar businesses, like commercial solar, like before the Trump administration and all of that. And it used to actually work extremely well with email as well, but we still had to send a good amount of emails to the extent where most of other offers wouldn't make sense with like having to send that amount of emails because like a deal is worth literally millions. It's like you can actually still afford it, and it still was the best channel that they could actually use to generate new clients and new projects. So yeah, that's actually a cool aspect of it as well. What do you feel like, you have quite a unique position as well with actually having a platform that a lot of, some of the best outreach, like experts and businesses doing outreach are actually using. If you look across, I imagine you do, like look across the data, what do you see? You mentioned that it's, the smaller the campaigns and probably the more segmented, the better. Are there any other lines that you've been able to draw in, like across that user base and data to see like these are the best practices that we see actually verified by data across our user base?
Sure, absolutely. Actually, I love checking it every time I see like news on LinkedIn. This works better than this. I love to go and check if the data really supports it.
Yeah.
So, first of
How
all, like
often does it actually support it?
50-50. I mean, I was very hyped up for like, the shorter subject line, the better conversion. And of course, like don't write a book in a subject line. But it's not necessarily that there is a direct correlation between open rate and reply rate and the length of subject line. At least the difference between like in a percentage is too small to say that it's like, deal breaker.
Yeah, this is
So
it.
yeah, it's like more sanity. So if you write there like super artificially looking cold outreach style line, it will not converge just because it's a bad subject line, not because it's long.
Mhm.
And the same is kind of with copy. We like, especially in Europe, when you're writing in language different than English, you can write a bit longer cold emails. The rule with that, which I truly believe, is that if you write a sentence, this sentence needs to earn the next sentence. So usually you try to write it very short to keep, the energy of a person or the attention span on your email. But it gets to the extreme that cold email is so short that the person does not understand what is the value proposition because there is no space for value proposition. So it's basically like, hi, CTA. It's also not the best approach, right? So of course, like long cold emails tend to get into spam because there is more content and usually there's a lot of HTML. But some markets, especially in languages other than English, can forgive you writing a bit longer copy. So this is not like exactly that. No more than this and this amount of signs. But of course, lighter is better.
Yeah.
Usually when you write in language other than English, you can count on better reply rate just by the language because of market saturation. So a lot of companies from the US or English-speaking countries outreach to non-English speaking countries in English because that's their main language. Those emails usually are lower on conversion. And on the other hand, for example, in Poland, you write cold emails in Polish, you will see better stats just by the fact that the language is other in English. And there was kind of big disproportion between languages, so that's something to consider.
If you have a sales process, which I think most B2B teams does, would you even do that if you don't actually have a salesperson that speaks that language?
Depending on the country, but to some, yes. So for example, if you're reaching out to a country that speak English, so for example, like Scandinavia, usually there's no problem to speak English there, or I don't know, the Netherlands, or there are just some countries that you can figure out pretty easily that English won't be a problem. Also per industry, usually in IT, especially if you're targeting like marketing/sales teams that are doing global marketing, that will just fly. And I mean, you can always say, hey, sorry, my colleague who speaks Norwegian is supposed to be here, but he's sick and I speak just English. Can we talk? And what's the worst case scenario? The person will say no. They will not like harm you objectively. So
Yeah, that's what we see as well. That's why I asked, because like the disproportion in terms of like how many more results, how many like less emails you have to send when you send in the native language is enough that even if some people say, then I don't want to speak to you, or I can't speak English, typically it's still worth it. But again, like depending on who you're reaching out to, if most of them don't speak English, then obviously it's not a good idea.
yeah, but also, the thing I see on scale, because weekly I try to do this exercise that I go through my spam folder and I read cold emails. Sometimes this is not so
That's
bad. I
rough.
report it not as a spam.
Yeah.
Don't do it very often. And I tried to check it on scale on our database. That was a bit tricky, but the amount of the percentage of cold email that speak about you, so starting with I, our company, we, that's massive. I mean, and it's so weird because we all talk about it so much. I feel like my whole like feed on LinkedIn is about you to I ratio, and people still do it. I mean, they talk about themselves in cold emails, and this is not a good idea because people don't want to read about you. If you're not like superstar in your niche, just don't do it. And I mean, that's so simple, and we still keep repeating,
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah, it's so simple. Like one of the first thing I feel like you learn, but I feel like it's just, people are excited about themselves and what they do, but they forget that the people, like the person actually reading whatever you're writing, is the exact same way. They're also only really excited about themselves and what they do. So if you speak about yourself, then no one's really going to listen.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Margaret, I think we're almost out of time. It has been really interesting to actually dig into all of your knowledge. If someone wanted to follow you or try Woodpecker, or what would be the best way, or best place?
Beyond the standard of to what I'm replying to. If you want to chat about cold outreach, or you want to discuss your copy, or you want to ask about anything, just go there and I'm happy to help. And if you want to try Woodpecker, you can just sign up for a trial. It's free. If you want to get some onboarding from our side, just let me know and I can help you to onboard, or I can ask my team. So always happy to help.
Sweet. It was a pleasure. I will speak to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.